Remember the good old days? Remember the good old days in church? How many of you used to go to church on Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night? Raise your hand. Wow, more than half of you. Something. Remember the good old days? What I'd like to do is I'd like you to share a little bit about the good old days in church. Not just this church, whatever church you happen to grow up in, either as a child, a youth, or a young adult, maybe. And I want you to tell us about some of the things you remember. Now, here's what I don't want you to do. I don't want you to say, oh, this is what we used to do, and we don't do it anymore, so I'm really mad about it. Frankly, I really don't care very much about that. What I want is to hear... Marcia's just heartbroken now. What I want to do is I want to celebrate some of the things that you just remember. The church still may do some of them may be long gone. But what I want to do is celebrate those things that you remember that were just a joy to you. And I'll start, and I want you to share your name and what church basically you're referring to, and then whatever that good memory is. So I'm Jeff Cooper. Hillcrest Baptist Church in Columbus, Ohio is the church I grew up in senior high school. And we had Wednesday night suppers. And after Wednesday supper, I went to a prayer meeting with all the elderly ladies, and most of them had blue hair. They were way ahead of their time. And I was the only youth who went to that. But then I had bell choir practice and choir practice and Bible study. I had all of those things on Wednesday night, which is why we had Wednesday night supper, because we were there all evening. The part I really kind of enjoyed most was cleaning up after the dinner. You see, all of the youth would clean up, and we had this giant commercial dishwasher where you shoved the tray in and pulled the doors down and pulled them up and shoved it through, and it did them real fast. And we got 25 cents per person who ate there, and that went towards sending us to our national campground at Green Lake, Wisconsin every summer. But just the fellowship and the fun of doing that activity together is something I remember as kind of my good old days in the church. So there are 3 people, one on each side and one in the middle, with microphones. And yes, please do use a microphone. They'll bring it to you. So just stand up, name, what church, and what you remember.
I was about 6.
Your name?
Ann Bybee, First Baptist Church here, Twin Falls. I was about 6, and we would come over here to the big church to come with my great-grandparents. And I didn't like it because all of the ladies wore big hats, and I couldn't see. And I had to wear starchy skirts and gloves, and I didn't like that much either.
So thank you for sharing the good memories you have of the good old days.
At the, what was the name of that church? It was a United Brethren church. I don't remember what its name was other than that. When I was a kid, and my mother would send me to Sunday school there, or not Sunday school, in the summertime. What is that? That's it, Vacation Bible School. And the thing I liked best about that church was they had a robot that had a red nose, and the louder we sang, the redder his nose got.
Okay, I have one. I'm Amber. And one of my fondest memories is growing up in this church was God's Squad. We would come on Tuesdays, I believe it was Tuesday nights, and we would have our Bible study, games and play, and then we would usually put together a musical, and we either performed at Christmas time or Easter, somewhere in there. So that was one of my fond memories. And Jamming for Jesus too. That was another musical group we had.
So for those who couldn't understand her, God Squad is what she said
God.
first. You said it real fast. Amen to Jesus.
Okay, well, I grew up in Tucson. I grew up LDS, but the fun part, and I do have to say, I love worshiping now because the whole time I was LDS, I never did feel. I was the only person in the world that liked Mondays because it was so far from Sunday. That's how hard it was to go to church. And I don't mean to bash it, but a big part of I was never going to go to church again when I left. But I will say, summer camp was so much fun, and we did secret pals, and it was so much fun. There was this huge board, and you'd go every day and see if your secret pal left you a treat or something for the whole week. And I had some of my very best childhood friends and memories came from summer camp. Because you know what? I think summer camp is universal. I don't care what church you belong to. I've never heard anyone say, I hate camp. It's the funnest ever, and it's a whole week of camaraderie with people your own age and playing silly games and connecting, and you carry it your whole life. It's just like, it's not a part of that religion that I was at the time. It was a part of my childhood that was so happy and I looked forward to every single day. But I will tell you, Pastor Jeff, that Sunday is my favorite day of the week. But it took me to 50 years old to get to be that. Every Sunday that I come, I worship, and it carries me through the rest of the week.
Praise God. Thank you, Janet.
I was literally raised in a Lava Rock church
And
in Shoshone, Idaho.
Your name?
Oh, my name is Marcia Eden. It was Adkins, Marcia Adkins. Adkins when I was in the little Lava Rock church. I was baptized there, went to Sunday School Forever, Bible School, BYF. My class met in the basement, Alicia? And you had to literally lift up the trap door when you got to the bottom of the stair, or to the top of the stairs to go into the basement. And Alicia and I were there together. We were fortunate enough to have wonderful teachers and leaders. I said I was baptized there. I was married there. I will not have my funeral there. It burned down. So, wonderful memories, including Christmas with the socks, the hard candy, ribbon candy, peanut shells, and orange that all stuck together.
Marcia, you could be cremated and it would be like being there.
Pastor.
I'm Bill Hinkle, and my memory is from a Baptist church that we went to in Santa Cruz, California. Actually, it was in a little tiny town of Felton. And we were pretty new Christians there, but we really put our life into it. And they had the Sunday evening and the Wednesday evening services, and we always tried to go to each one of them. Our daughters at the time were very small, as small as Michelle. I think she was about 3 years old then. They didn't have childcare on Wednesday night, so you went to church, you sat in church, your children sat with you. Sometimes there was a quiet period when we were praying. Michelle could not stay awake. So as others prayed, she snored. And it's always been a memory of ours. It was so cute. And it was a precious part of the church service there because everybody got to know who it was.
I'm Barbara Holloway. I was married in 1950 and married into a strong Baptist family. I'm proud to say now that my 5 great-grandchildren are worshiping here, and 4 grandchildren, and Uriah's one little girl. And it's really nice to have 7 generations
Wow.
of one family. Thank you.
Yeah. Happy. Yep.
I'm Paulette Pifley Ellis, and in my early childhood I grew up in a little town called Baker, Montana, which is right on the North Dakota-Montana border. And my dad was a construction contractor, and he built the First Baptist Church there in Baker, and there's still a little plaque out there that has his name on it, dedicated to him. And I just remember when we moved the summer before I started 7th grade, we moved here to Idaho from there, and how upsetting and emotional it was. And I thought, I'm never going to have the same friends, including the pastor's kids. We were all the same age, and we used to go to the Black Hills to church camp, and go to the Indian reservations and minister on our youth trips on Sunday afternoons and Wednesday nights. And yet when I moved here, I met dear friends like Jerry Ruth and Ann Mae DeGlee and Janice Prather and Dave Turner, and they welcomed me into Sunday school here, and Ruth Turner would play that old piano that was upstairs in the Boy Scout room here, and we had all kinds of fun things. And Ima Durward was my Sunday school teacher, and she knew I loved shoes, so she gave me a little glass slipper that I, to this day, still have in my bedroom. But what a blessing it has been to be a member of this church family, and how much I've appreciated it, and nothing has blinked, and everything's just been beautiful since.
My name is Michelle Cotto, and I have a couple memories I'd like to talk about. I grew up in the First Baptist Church of Antioch, California, and I remember as a little girl, I always liked standing next to my mom because she had a beautiful, beautiful voice, but she was never able to be in the choir because she worked shift work, so it was hit and miss whether she would be there. And on the Sundays that she didn't give us a ride to church, Ben and Carol Fong always picked us up and took us to church. And I've told Teddy this a few times, but every time I hear her sing, it just instantly puts me back to when I was a little girl and used to sit there and just feel like I was in heaven when I would hear Jaquita Frew sing, because their voices are so similar. And so I love it when she sings. It just makes me feel like I'm 10 years old again. But also, in the summers, we would come here and stay with my grandparents as much as we could, and we came every Sunday here with Grandma and Grandpa. And I remember, even on the Sundays that they may not be feeling well, we would always say, "Can we please ride the bikes?" And we would ride the bikes over here and then run upstairs to our Sunday school class. So a lot of good memories there and here for me. So, and I'm really proud that both my girls, I think the talent in the voice department and sports for that matter skipped my generation, but both my girls got it from my mom. So
I'm Nancy Glazeman, and my memories of the First Baptist Church in Buell. On the fifth Sunday, we would just sing. That's all we would do. People would call out numbers in the hymnal, and we would sing whatever song it was, sometimes not too good because we wouldn't know it. But Elizabeth Boner, I don't know if anybody remembers Elizabeth, but she played the piano. She had a piano, one of those piano benches that rolled, and she'd roll back and forth in front of the piano, and she could really play. You're nodding your head. You remember how she could play? Amazing. And she'd roll back and forth and play the piano, and those are my favorite Sundays when all we did was sing.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. Oh, John, we'll let John finish his off here. Tell us who you are.
I'm John Turner. These are my folks, Ruth and Keith Turner. And my fondest memory is being in Boy Scouts here. And Jack Asher, who's still here, he was our Boy Scout leader. And he took us on down the middle fork of the Salmon River. We called it the 50 miler. We were gone for a week. Nothing but Jack and a dozen Boy Scouts. And it was quite an experience. And in this day and age, I don't think parents would let Jack do that.
You made me say no, Jack, or?
No, because parents want to hold your hand all the way from, yeah, anyway.
It was not a comment about Jack.
Not a comment, all my comments about Jack are all very positive. We had a great time in Boy Scouts. And another memory I had was back in the day, the First Baptist Church had a softball team for the adults. And they were all pretty old to be playing softball, you know, about 30 years old or something. But Marvin Molyneux and my dad played on that team, and it was a lot of fun to watch. All us kids watched them, and it was great fun. Anyway, those are my fond memories of this church.
Fantastic. You know, speaking of sports, John, one other memory I have, the good old days was when, as a youth, we had a volleyball team. And we played, and Friday night I tried to relive those good old days and thought I'd play on the church volleyball team. And somebody apparently twisted my arm a little too hard, so that's the point of this thing. But I just have to kind of keep it immobilized for a little bit until it gets better. Well, thank you for sharing some of the things you remember about the good old days of the church. I want to look now at some of the good old days in the Old Testament. And so let's transfer our thinking even a lot further back for a few moments. All the way back to when Israel became a kingdom. See, God reigned as supreme king. It was a theocracy. God was in charge of the Hebrew people. And they kind of complained and put a committee together and said, we really need an earthly king. Well, God wasn't real happy about that, but he allowed them to have a king and appointed Saul as the first king of Israel. The next king was David. So you're right with me, right? And then kings after that. Eventually, Israel was made up of 12 tribes. The 12 sons of Jacob became the 12 tribes of Israel. Jacob's name actually means Israel, or God calls him Israel, because his sons become those 12 tribes. Well, eventually, the kingdom gets split in two, and the northern part of the kingdom, made up of 10 of the tribes, becomes Israel, keeps the name Israel, and the southern part of 2 tribes becomes Judah, and that's where Jerusalem is located. Okay? Why? Because they stopped following closely the theocracy. God is king, and they put in earthly kings. There's just going to be trouble with that. Well, then, as time goes on, the Assyrian Empire gets stronger and stronger and stronger, and they come down and they conquer the northern part of the kingdom, Israel, and they take them into captivity. And then Babylon comes on the rise, and they come and they overtake Judah, and so all of God's people basically are in captivity. And then along comes Isaiah, a prophet. A prophet doesn't just foretell things. More than anything, a prophet speaks into the culture, speaks into the time on God's behalf, as well as telling what's going to happen. In fact, Isaiah was able to see that King Cyrus, the king of the Persians, was going to come long before Isaiah could have known, but God revealed it to him, would come, and the king of Persia would help actually make it so God's people could leave captivity and get back to the promised land. And so Isaiah stood up and on God's behalf spoke to the people. You know what it's like going from captivity back to your homeland? It's kind of like coming out of sin and coming to the righteousness of God. Having forgiveness, being a captive and a slave to sin, and God setting you free from that. To a life to live that's holy and good and pleasing to Him. Let me share with you one other thing before we get to what Isaiah said on behalf of God. Faculties, professors in colleges. How many of you have been a professor at a college? I know we have one right there. Got some others, okay, that have served as professors in college. Faculties in higher education are notorious for their endless debate. As scholars with a gift of working ideas and weighing the details, the tendency is to talk until all parties are heard and every opinion is explored on a particular issue. Then, if everyone is not satisfied and the proceedings run true to form, the issue will be referred to committee for further study before a recommendation is made. So talk is going back and forth and nothing seems to be happening or settled, and so they say, well, let's form a committee and have them study it, and then come back and we'll debate it some more. But there is a way that can be circumvented. Among college presidents, this saying is often repeated. Nothing ever happens in a faculty meeting until the president stands up and defines the sense of the meeting. In other words, the debate's going back and forth, and the president, the one who's in charge, stands up and tells everybody, this is the way it is. This is what we're here for. This is how we will proceed. Now, you've probably been on committees and in meetings where both ways have happened. One is where you go back and forth and nothing's decided. You say, well, let's form a committee to study that further. Or where things have been going back and forth, and the leader, the president, stands up and says, I've heard enough. This is how it is. This is where we're going. Right? You've probably experienced both of those. Well, when we come to Isaiah 48, the first 11 verses, this is where God has been listening to the debate, have been listening to his people go back and forth, and where he, God, the president, stands up and says, in fact, his first words are, listen to this. Pay attention to me. I've let you have your say. I've let you go your way, but listen to me. O house of Jacob. Who's Jacob? Israel. Listen to this, O house of Jacob, you who are called by the name of Israel, and come from the line of Judah. You who take oaths in the name of the Lord and invoke the God of Israel. Who are these people whom God is speaking to? These are the best of the best. These are the righteous ones. These are the ones who follow after God, right? That's what it sounds like. God continues, you who take oaths in the name of the Lord, who invoke the God of Israel, but not in truth or righteousness. You do all these things. You have all these externals. You look like you're doing it right, but you're not doing it in truth or righteousness. You who call yourself citizens of the holy city and rely on the God of Israel, the Lord Almighty is his name. Again, it's a little confusing because it sounds like these are the best of the best, but somehow they're not. They only seem to be. Still standing up talking. I foretold the former things long ago. My mouth announced them and I made them known. Then suddenly I acted and they came to pass. In other words, God's saying, look, I told you what was going to happen. And at the moment I decided, I acted swiftly and they happened. I told you it was going to happen, then I made it happen. For I knew how stubborn you were. The sinews of your neck were like iron and your forehead was like bronze. You ever have a stiff neck? And you want to look somebody over here, you have to turn your whole body. God is basically saying, you stiff-necked people, right? Therefore, I told you these things long ago before they happened. I announced them to you so that you could not say, my idols did them, my wooden image and my metal god ordained them. You have heard these things, look at them. Will you not admit them? In other words, I told you the things that would happen long before they happened so you would know that I speak the truth. And I hold the future in my hands. But they did not believe God had done it. Rather, they're idols. Do you have any idols that you think do things that God is actually doing? One of those is modern medicine, I think. I think that's one of the easiest ones for us to understand. We say, well, God didn't heal me. This pill healed me. Or this surgery or procedure healed me. It wasn't God. Wait a minute. Who gave those people who do those things the mind and the understanding of how to do them so it could bring healing? Who gave it to the mind of man that they take a part of this plant and a part of this plant and they crush them down together and they put them together and they put them in this little capsule thing for you to take to get you over that cold? Where did that come from? Where did that knowledge, where did that understanding come from? Well, it came from God. All things good come from God ultimately. But we can take our idols and we can say, well, really it was this. God had no part in it. God says, you stiff-necked people. Then God goes on through Isaiah. He says, from now on I will tell you of new things. In other words, I'm not just going to repeat all the old stuff. I'm going to tell you of new things, of hidden things unknown to you. They are created now and not long ago. God didn't finish. He finished the general creation, but he didn't finish working. He says, these things I've now created not long ago. I'm not just going to repeat the old things, but I'm going to do something new, and you will see it come to pass, and you'll know that I've done it. Then, and only then, maybe, will you see that I am for real, that I am the living God. I am not made out of bronze or wood or some other metal. I am the real thing. From now on, I will tell you of new things, of hidden things unknown to you. They are created now and not long ago. You have not heard of them before today, so you cannot say, yes, I knew of them. You have neither heard nor understood. From of old your ear has not been opened. Well do I know how treacherous you are. You were called a rebel from birth. I mean, why does God even care? Why doesn't he go to a different people than the ones he chose at first, the Hebrew people? Surely another group of people will get it right. Surely a different group of people, let's call them Christians. They'll get it. They'll understand the true and the living God. Why does God even do these things? Why does God do something new and tell us he's going to do something new and then show us that he doesn't? Why does he prove himself to us over and over again? Does he do it for us? He does it for his own name's sake. We go on. For my own name's sake, I delay my wrath. For the sake of my praise, I hold it back from you so as to not cut you off. Yes, it's so as to not cut off, but why does he do it? For his name's sake, for his praise, not for ours. We like to create God in our image, don't we? In fact, we can't help but do that. We all here, or a majority of us, believe in the God who is the Father of Jesus Christ, God's Son. And we know that by the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. But still, we look at God through our filters. And so unless we're careful, we'll take that to an extreme and we'll make God in our image, after our likeness, instead of recognizing that we're made in God's image, after his likeness. I have refined you, though not as silver. I have tested you in the furnace of affliction. Why? For my own sake, for my own sake. I love it. And Paul, the second time you read it, he put a little pause in between there. But it would be so easy for us just to go over that and think he stuttered or something. It's so important for us to get this, that it's about God and not about us. For my own sake, I do this. How can I let myself be defamed? I will not yield my glory to another. God is God, and he's going to stand up, and he's going to say so, and he's not going to let anybody change him, for he is the same yesterday, today, and forever. But how God works in the world changes. Not the content of who he is, not the quality of his character. That's always the same. And for the church, that stuff is always the same. The content, the gospel never changes. But how we share that, how we make that known, consistently changes. We know that the church is not the same as it was 1,000 years ago, or 500 years ago during the Protestant Reformation, or 60 years ago in the 1950s. How many of you remember the 1950s? See, my mother said that she doesn't know anything about the 1950s because she had all three of her children during the 1950s. So that decade for her is kind of a blur. But if you think about how church was then and how it is today, you know that church is not the same. There are some same things, and again, the content, the core of who we are is the same, but how we do things is quite different in many ways. There's a difference, too, in how change takes place. Before, change in the church used to take hundreds of years. And then it changed to taking decades. But now it's within years and sometimes even months that change has to take place to keep up with sharing the good news of Jesus Christ in a culture that changes so fast and rapidly. My job today, the job part of what I do, is vastly different than it was 25 years ago. 25 years ago, I visited people and I preached. Period. That's what I did. I took care of the worship service, I preached, and I spent time with people. Today, that's vastly different. We're expected to do much more. We're expected to actually lead the church. We're supposed to do things with staff. We're supposed to do just a lot of different things that we didn't used to have to do or weren't expected to do. Let me share some shifts that are happening in the church and how they, or not just in the church, in the world, and how they impact the church. So I'm going to say some things that are evaporating in our culture, some things that are emerging, and then the possible impact that'll have. Landline phones. How many of you have a landline phone? How many of you no longer have a landline phone? Now, 10 years ago, if I asked that question, how many hands would have gone up for a landline phone? All of them, but a third of them today did not. My home, if you go look at the side of my garage, got a bunch of wires wrapped around a box. They're phone lines. They were never installed in the house. When we moved there, they said, do you want them installed? We said, no, because we're going to use VoIP, Voice over Internet Protocol, Vonage service, which used the internet. So we didn't need lines. We didn't need cords and cables plugged in. And then since then, we've gotten rid of that because we have cell phones, so we don't need that extra, quote, landline there. Eventually, none of us will have landlines. Businesses still may for security reasons or whatever, but most of us in homes, well, it won't even be offered eventually. New homes are not built with those wires so you can plug it into the wall. Because why? The increased number of cell phones. Possible impact, mobility, connection, delivery system options for even Christian education. What do I say to you on Sunday morning? Go to YouVersion, right? So that even for Christian education, there it is right there down in the front. Thank you, girls. Is it a way to deliver Christian education? It can be through the phone or through the internet. Evaporating, denominational alignment, emerging multiple alignments. No longer do people really care very much about their denomination. It used to be very important. In fact, if you moved from one town to another, the first thing you did was look for the church with your label on it. Most people don't do that anymore. Some of us still do. I still would, because that is important to me. But more and more that's becoming less and less important, and so people will get aligned with, doesn't matter if they're a denomination or not or whatever, and denominations are coming together because they're shrinking, they're losing financial resources, and they have to combine to stay alive. The possible impact is partnership building surpasses denominational building. Who do you work with? Evaporating, maintenance-minded churches. 50 years ago, all churches had to do was maintain what they were doing. Just keep doing what they're doing. You didn't have to think about new ways of doing things. Again, you can go back 25 years when I became a pastor. I didn't have to think about new ways of doing things. I just had to keep doing the same things the same way, and people would come to church. That's not true anymore. Instead, we have to have, and what's emerging is missional-focused churches instead of maintenance-focused. Possible impact, church presence is more valued than church attendance. People outside the church care more about what the church is doing to impact the community than how many of you sit in a building on Sunday morning. It's important to come and sit in the building, right? And to be here and to be present and worship and do all that. But what is more important to the people outside is what we do outside of here and our mission focus, not our maintenance focus. Evaporating, inward focused evaluation metrics, how we determine whether we're doing well or not. Emerging, missional, outward focused evaluation metrics. Impact, measuring church by impact and influence, not just attendance. Which is a good thing. Do you know that in 2012, this church, First B, had 50 fewer people, in 2013, had 50 fewer people than it had in 2012. Did you just hear that? Last year, there were 50 fewer people on average in attendance than there were the year before. That's a big number when you're talking out of 200, right? That's a large number, and that I don't usually kind of get freaked out by attendance because I know there's always ebb and flow. But when I saw that, I thought, wow, that's a lot. Why is that? Well, because of some of these trends and some of these things that happen. One of the things that happens now that didn't used to happen is people are so much more mobile than they used to be. But not even moving. I mean, here we have, can I pick on you guys for a moment? It makes me sad. The Kennedys are going to be moving because Nate had a great job opportunity and is going to take that in Idaho Falls. Is that where it is? And so they'll be moving, and lo and behold, the parents want to go too. Be with their kids. What's that about? But that happens so much more. You know how many young adult families we've had move out of city and out of state for jobs over the last 2 years? Lots. Let me throw some names at you. Nottigals, Callantines, Walkers. Should I go on and on? There are more and more who have left for jobs. But not only that even within a community, people move more. People go to a church as long as their wheel is being greased. Right? As long as it's not squeaky. As soon as it starts to get squeaky, whereas before, or even still, some people will stay, they don't care how squeaky their wheel is. This is my church, and I'm going to be here, and that's it. But many people today say, oh, it's not greased. It's not moving smooth for me anymore. The preacher looked at me cross-eyed. The Bible study leader said something I don't agree with. The fellowship hour, the spaghetti just wasn't the flavor that I liked. So I'm going to find a church with a spaghetti dinner, and I'm going to try their spaghetti. And I'm serious that happens so much more today than it would have in the past. And obviously the impact on the church is great. Clergy-driven church versus lay-driven ministries that are emerging more and more and more, celebrating all the people of God and church in the world. An 8-hour workday, 5 days a week, to a 24/7 work week. The impact is multiple programming at times and places most accessible and convenient. I've said for years, and we'll see if God brings it to pass, that we ought to do a service like at 10 o'clock p.m. on a Monday night. For whom? Well, college-age students. College-age students don't want to get up on Sunday morning early because they've been out late, finally having some fun after a long week at school. And so we don't see them in church. So a Monday night at 10 o'clock would probably work great for them, be a study break before they go back to study until 2 in the morning. It would also be great for people who work on the weekends. Put the kids to bed, babysitter, and you come to worship. So looking at things a little differently. Economic-based stress due to aging congregation. Who are the most faithful givers typically in a church? The ones who have been a part of that church for a long time, which are who? The older part of the church. And as they die off, that giving is no longer there, right? So emerging are diversified financial bases. Because, and Sally, where are you at? I've used your name recently this week. I don't know if your ears were burning. I said, there are not going to be that many Sally Molinos that come along anymore, who come and be a part of a church from the time they're a child all the way through their entire lives, either because they moved away or because their wheel wasn't greased or for some reason people just move so much more often. And that loyalty and therefore that level of giving doesn't get there. And so you have to have a diversified financial base using creative funding sources, technological venues for giving and support. Do you know that just a month ago, somebody came up to somebody in our church and said, I would love to give a donation. Somebody who doesn't go here, but came to our preschool kids program, said, I would love to contribute to the preschool, and I'd love to contribute to the church for the great work that you're doing. Where do I go online to give? Do you know that we don't have a place online right now to give? And so, you know that, I don't know why, because for Man of La Mancha, you were able to go online and purchase tickets. So it's not that difficult thing. We just haven't done it yet. And as far as I know, we never received the gift from that person because we didn't make it easy for them. We didn't make it convenient for them. We didn't make it the way that their culture says they spend money. They don't walk around with a checkbook. They don't walk around with cash. They have a credit card. So there was that money loss. So that's some of the things that change. I'm going to skip a number more of these. Congregational-based church to missional-based church. Having multiple forms of ministry. So many churches today are going multi-site. Do you know that we have people who listen to our message who aren't a part of this church? But they're a part of this church. Why? Because they get the same message you do. You'll just never likely meet them. And here's the last one. Televisions are disappearing in many homes. What's emerging is on-demand mobile television and programming movies. In other words, not the screen isn't disappearing, but the way we receive TV. A lot of you have probably Cable One or Dish or something like that. Eventually, you won't have that anymore. What you're going to have is Netflix or Hulu or one of those kinds of things. It costs right now about $7 or $8 a month. And you can get a large part of your TV program that way. In fact, you can take it with you on your phone when you go to the dentist office and you have to sit there and wait for 10 minutes. You're watching the show when you can pick it up right where you left off on your phone. Now, some of you are looking at me like, what? Some of you are looking at me like, well, yeah, that's what I do. More and more, that kind of thing will happen. What's the impact? Entertainment, education, leisure becoming on-demand and mobile. If that's the case, what do you think people are going to expect from church? That it meets them where they are, not that they have to come and meet where the church is. The content doesn't change. The good news doesn't change, but the way we do things does. What does it mean for me? For us. This means we not only have to make sure we don't have an iron neck and a bronze forehead, but that we improve our flexibility. And I can't show you very well right now because my wing is held up. But how do you get flexible? You get flexible by exercising your flexibility. Who are those who will rise up regardless of age? and not be content to put in an hour a week at best, but willing to commit your life for the sake of Christ's church. For it to become the most important quest in your life. If we don't do all we can, the church that you have known will cease to exist. If you don't believe me, just ask the people in the 8,000 churches in the United States that closed their doors last year. I didn't make that number up. 8,000 churches in 2012 closed the doors. Why? Because of declining attendance. When you have 12 people left, you can no longer afford to pay the electric bill, so you say, that's it. We've got to close the doors. Who is no longer at church? Well, the good news is the majority of people no longer at church are the people on the fringes. The once to twice a month attenders. The ones with little investment. I say good news because the faithful remnant remains. I have proof in dollars and cents, even of this church. How many people did I say fewer we had in 2013 than we did in 2012? How many? 50. Do you know what the difference was in our financial giving? You would think it would be a lot. With 50 fewer people, very little difference in the giving. What does that tell you? What does it tell me? It tells me that those who are investing themselves are still here. That's good news to me. That's good news. That's not financial good news to the preacher. That's good news because I know where your heart is. Why? Because where your heart is, what? There your treasure will be also. You put your treasure here. So that not all, but a good majority of those who were no longer here in 13 as 12 were the ones who weren't investing themselves as much as you do. Look, we do not need to make stuff up for a new culture and a new day. God's already doing that. We just need to keep our eyes on Him and see where He's going. If that means we pump up existing ministries of Sunday school, small groups, mission circles in a new way, then we do that. If it means adding multiple services or even different venues for where we offer worship, then we do that. Not where should we move in ministry, but where is God already moving in ministry, and how do we follow Him there? How do we do what God's doing instead of expecting God to do what we're doing? God, come and bless what I'm doing. No, no, no. God, allow us to be in the blessing of what you're already doing. Because we know if we just try to get you to bless what we're doing, it's going to fall apart because it's our mind, our ideas, our opinions, but what are you doing that none of us have seen? What are you creating that's new and you're going to show us? And we're not going to be stiff-necked, and we're going to pay attention, and we're going to follow you. Corporately, Isaiah 43:19. See, I'm doing a new thing, God says. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the desert and streams in the wasteland. You're probably sitting there waiting, what's the pastor going to announce? Are we doing something new that I'm not going to like? I know I'm not going to like it. If it's something new, I'm ready. Go ahead. I'm not announcing anything other than the good news of Jesus Christ. I don't have the plan. I don't have the way. I am with you, with my brothers and sisters, saying, God, what are you doing? Where are you doing it? Because I don't quite get this culture. Because I didn't grow up in it like younger people do and have. So God, you're going to have to show us what you're doing in this day. And we want to join you in whatever that is, God. And we're going to say, we love the good old days. We love the good old days of 60 years ago. We love the good old days of 25 years ago, God. But we know that you're doing a new thing. And we want to make new good old days for people 50 years from now. That they'll have this kind of a Sunday and they'll talk about today and the things that you were doing in their lives through the church. Because there was a church in Twin Falls, Idaho, that decided it was not going to be hampered or stopped by the past. It was going to celebrate the past. It was going to honor heritage. But it was going to be willing to do what you were doing in 2014. Final text, 2 Corinthians 5:17, is for the individual. Isaiah 43:19 for all of us. 2 Corinthians 5:17 for each one of us individually. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has gone, and the new has come. Do you know Jesus? Is he your Lord and Savior? That is the most important thing that this church is about? Do you know Jesus as your Lord and Savior? Has He come into your life and made you a new creation? Has He come in and removed your sin and made you new in Him? You see, God is doing a new thing, and He's ready to do a new thing in you today. If you simply trust Him, go with where God is. You don't say, God, come to me, because He already has. He's come to you in Jesus. You need to turn to come to Him. And He is faithful and just and will forgive you all of your sin and will make you right in Him. If that's you today, I invite you as we sing our closing song to go into our prayer room right through this door. Prayer team member will be there and would love to pray with you. Or you say, you know what, I'm a part of this church and I've been coming, but I haven't really invested myself. Oh yeah, I've given money and I've maybe done a little, but I really haven't invested myself. I haven't made it a quest, a mission of my life to make sure that this church, First B, is the best church it can be for our community. Twin Falls, Castleford, Jerome, Buell, Filer. I haven't decided till today that I am going to be a part in whatever way God wants me to be. I don't know what that means. I don't know what it looks like yet, but I'm willing to commit myself to making sure that God uses me the best way possible to have the best church for our community. Not the best church in the community, the best church for the community. That's what we desire.